Hey guys, hey, this is Anne Marie, and this is the Anti-HR channel. And I like to talk about HR things and also, current events and things that I think have an impact or are impacted by HR. So I like to talk about things, issues that I think impact workers. I try to talk about these things in a way that helps employees understand their workplace rights and also feel empowered to walk away from discriminatory, hostile work environments when they recognize that they are in one. And I try to also give advice and information that also helps employees exit these kinds of work environments with cash in their pocket where appropriate when their workplace rights have been violated, and when they decide that they want to walk away, that they make sure they walk away. I always say leave, but not without your coins if your employer is violating your rights and breaking the law. And I try to do this from the context of my over 20 years in HR and provide information that helps people understand better how HR works, how it interacts to the benefit of the employer and not always in the benefit of the employee. I do not provide legal advice. Nothing in this video constitutes legal advice. If you feel that you need legal advice, talk to an attorney in your jurisdiction, i.e., literally in the state where you live. Okay? Today, I want to talk about something that I have been thinking about for a long time, and I haven't talked about it because I wanted to be thoughtful about how I came at it. I wanted to not do it in a reactive manner. I know a lot of people are bringing up these things in the context of the Essence Festival, and we'll get to that in a minute, but I don't want to talk about it in a reactionary manner. I really wanted to talk about it more in the context of things that I have observed of late. When I say of late, I mean things that I've noticed in the last several years, not even in the last year, in the last month, in the last week. This is something that I've noticed probably around 2020, but I've just noticed the narrative around these things increasing over time. And I have very strong ideas and feelings about why that is happening, and I will share them in this video. But I want to talk about what I call nativism in a dashiki, okay? Some people might call it diaspora wars. I call it nativism in a dashiki. And I think it's important for us to understand what nativism is and the role that it's playing in these conversations. So let's first talk about the definition of nativism. So I'm going to read to you guys the definition of nativism, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about how I think this is showing up in the Black American community and why I think it's very concerning and actually a real problem for the Black American community, not just for the communities that are at the receiving end of it. So nativism is a political ideology that prioritizes the interests and well-being of native-born or established residents of a country over those of immigrants, okay? And then I'm going to share a definition of xenophobia, because I think people are bringing this up in social media in the context of some of these things. And I also think it's important to know what things mean when you say them. So xenophobia is the fear or dislike of anything that's perceived as being foreign or strange. It is an expression that is based on the perception that a conflict exists between an in-group and an out-group, okay? Or you could also say xenophobia is the dislike or prejudice against people from other countries, okay? And so I want to talk a little bit about how this is showing up in our social debate, social commentary, political landscape, and why I think it's showing up now, and why I think it's very, very dangerous for Black people in America generally and Black Americans specifically, okay? So I noticed the use of terminology like foundational Black American and ADOS, and I'm looking up everything on my laptop as I'm talking because I like to be speaking facts. Y'all know how I feel about facts. So what is a foundational Black American? Foundational Black American refers to a specific group of Black Americans who are descendants of enslaved people in the United States. It's a term used to emphasize their unique lineage and historical connection to the United States of America, distinguishing them from later Black immigrants or those with mixed ancestry. This term is often used in discussions of reparations and cultural identity. The term foundational Black American came into use somewhere in the 2010s, but I would say that I noticed and heard people start using it in a problematic way starting around 2020. And I think that matters. The timing of when people started talking about it as a way to separate themselves started in 2020 and continues now, right? The other interchangeable term is ADOS. So the other term is ADOS, and ADOS refers to American descendants of slavery. And I think the two terms are often used interchangeably, right? And the term ADOS, as well as FBA, is often used in the context of discussing reparations for Black Americans who are the descendants of slaves in the United States of America. And I want to preface what I'm going to say by saying a couple things. First of all, I completely support reparations for Black Americans. I think they should have received it a long time ago. I think if people who were held in Japanese internment camps could receive reparations from the United States government for that very wrongful act in history, that Black Americans should have received reparations a long, long time ago. So I have no problems with reparations. I have no problems with the idea that there should be guidelines around who gets it and that it should be people who can show their ancestors were slaves in the United States of America. And I don't know of any immigrant groups who have ever said that that shouldn't be the case. So I always find it weird when people bring it up, and they bring it up as if someone's saying that should be an issue and that immigrants should receive reparations as well. And I've never heard anyone who's an immigrant say that. But I hear a lot of people, especially in social media comments, indicate that somehow somebody who's an immigrant, people who are Black American immigrants or people who are first generation Black Americans like I am, who are the children of immigrants, are trying to take their reparations. And it's odd to me. But I think that it's a very complex issue. And I think that in order for it to happen, it will need the support of a lot of people, not just people in Congress, but I think Black people across the Black community need to actively help to support it. And I think that becomes difficult when people are using terms like tethers to refer to people who are Black American by birth and tell them that they are somehow less Black American because of their parents. And it also brings up another question for me. And I'm going to name some people, and then I have some questions, right? And so I want to mention some people who are very well known in Black American history, who I guess you all would be calling tethers today. So Malcolm Little, who is my personal hero, also known as Malcolm X, was born to a mother who was born in Grenada, right? His mother was from Grenada. Stokely Carmichael, who is a very important, also known as Kwame Ture, who's also a very prominent member and person historically in the Black Power movement and in the Black civil rights movement in the United States of America, was born in Trinidad and on the island of Trinidad. My parents are from Trinidad and Tobago. They're twin islands. My parents are from Tobago. Stokely Carmichael was born on the island of Trinidad, right? Shirley Chisholm, the first Black woman to ever be a serious candidate and to run for president, is also the child of Black immigrants from the Caribbean. Harry Belafonte, Colin Powell, Sidney Poitier, Louis Farrakhan. Susan L. Taylor, the editor-in-chief of Essence, right, who helped found the Essence Festival. Her parents are from Trinidad and St. Kitts. The list goes on. Maya Angelou, her father is from Trinidad. The list goes, I could go on and on and on. Okay? Are these people tethers? Are they less Black American because their parents were born somewhere else? Are y'all giving them all back too? Or is this just kind of conditional thing? And I'm speaking directly to the people who like to throw this terminology around. So of course, if it doesn't apply to you, then you do need to come into my comments, right? But what I'm pointing out is the slippery slope of this. But I think even more important to me is I go back to, when did we start talking about this? When did this become a thing, right? And I can't go into this without acknowledging there is no question that there are people in the African immigrant community, the Caribbean immigrant community, as well as we could talk about Latinos, Asians, but I'm going to talk about the Black immigrant community right today. That's who I'm talking to and talking about. And I've done videos about this. I've talked about the impact of colonialism on the continent of Africa. I've talked about the impact of colonialism in the Caribbean, and that even though slavery may have ended in those places before the United States in some cases, that those islands were not independent until the 1960s and the 1970s, and some of them 1950s to 1970s, right? So their country was being still controlled economically and in every other way by the West, right? France, multiple countries in Europe, the United Kingdom, Belgium, the Dutch, Netherlands. All of these places are former colonizers, right? And so the way that played out in those places may be different than the way it played out in the United States, and in a less overt way than in the United States, of course, except for South Africa and their apartheid system. But the impacts are the same. The reality is that a lot of people who come from Africa, the continent of Africa, and the Caribbean, they came to the United States for primarily economic reasons and not to escape colonialism. A lot of them do not recognize how much colonialism impacts the way they think about themselves as Black people, as well as the way that they think about other Black people, not just Black Americans, but even people in their own continent and Caribbean. Because here's the thing that I know for a fact, as a person from the Caribbean, whose parents from the Caribbean. And I lived on an island, so I can say this factually. My parents are not just from there, but I lived on the island of Trinidad for 7 years, right? My dad took a job there. We moved there for a while, and then we came back to the United States. And I finished high school in the United States and went to college and law school and everything in the U.S. But I lived in another country, which was actually beneficial in the end, even though I hated it at the time. But I can honestly say that when you live in those places, race is not an issue, right? But there's a lot of classism, there's a lot of colorism, and there's a lot of competition even between the islands, right? There's a lot of competition there. There's schisms, and all of it flows out of the same place. What do I always say? All roads lead to white supremacy, right? And the impact of white supremacy in all these places. You go to the continent of Africa and you listen to the way people from certain countries talk about people from other countries. You listen to ways, people talk about people from Nigeria, or how people in certain regions will talk about people from, this country versus that country. There's schisms in between the countries. And I believe a lot of it has to do with white supremacy as well as tribalism, right? Which is a big part of the history of the continent of Africa, right? Is that people were tribal. It wasn't really boundaries based on demarcations. It was boundaries based on tribe. And one of the reasons there's been so much problems in Africa after it was divided by the West, right, is because they mixed people together that never lived together before, who were tribally at odds with each other. And I'm not sure that was done unintentionally, right? Because they don't want unification on the continent, especially because they can't continue to control their resources if they're unified. If Africa decided to unify the way that the Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait have unified around oil supply, can you imagine the power that the continent of Africa would have if they unified over their resources and decided that they would set the price, and they kicked out all the governments and the corporations and decided that they would set the price and that they would use the money to improve the lives of the people that live on the continent of Africa? Do you know how good people in Saudi Arabia and UAE live? Do you know how well they live? And the reason is because they use the money to improve the lives of their citizens. They bring in the people who work in the country. I remember going to a hotel in Qatar. I got a flight delayed. I ended up staying in Qatar. And I remember driving to the hotel that I was going to stay overnight in. And the first thing that struck me was how clean it was, how modern it was, how beautiful it was. And that when I went to the hotel, nobody that worked for the hotel was a local person. They were all immigrant staff. Everybody, from the guy who opened the door for me at the hotel to the person who checked me in, to the people who cleaned the rooms. Now, a lot of the guests were, Middle East people from the country. I don't know whether are they Qatari, but they were people from the country. But nobody that worked in the hotel was. The person who brought my room service, nobody. Everybody was from somewhere else. Philippines, there's a person from Philippines, people from different places in Africa, lots of people from Southeast Asia, like Sri Lanka, India, those places. They all go there and they work, right? But you don't see local people cleaning the street. You don't, because they have all that oil money. What if Africa did the same thing? And a lot of what is happening is to ensure that Africa never does the same thing, right? And so I say this to say, and the Caribbean, for example, there is a alliance called CARICOM, and it is an alliance of Caribbean countries. I don't know if every single Caribbean country is a member, but most of them are. And many of the countries in the Caribbean, including Trinidad, have oil and gas. And they formed an alliance to control their oil and gas, right? Now, there are countries that operate, but they don't control it. The government does, right? And in Trinidad and Tobago, college and all those things, you don't pay for that. The government pays for it, right? And some people may argue even on the island that people are too dependent on the government and they get too much from the government. But the fact is that the government finances a lot of things, important things, healthcare, all those things because of the oil and gas money. Now, all islands don't have that. But right now, CARICOM is working as an alliance to push the British government for reparations. And they're having serious conversations about that. And you don't see the members of the islands criticizing each other and going after each other and saying who deserves more reparations more than anybody else. That's not going on. They are unified in their conversations about their belief that reparations are owed to the islands because of colonialism, slavery, etc. Right? And so I really think that part of this whole ADOS and FBA discussion, I believe that at the foundation of it, if we really were able to lift the layers, we would find that there are other players that are pushing these narratives, right? Because in the United States, Black people, not just Black Americans, Black people are a very important voting bloc. If you can separate and break down that voting bloc, you will be able to pretty much do whatever you want in the country, right? And I have noticed since probably, I would say, the 2016 election, there have been active conversations using social media, which is the biggest source of disinformation and misinformation there is, to create divisions inside of the Black community, right? And there are articles that have been written about how disinformation is being used to influence voters in the US. And I shared one. I will share more in the description of this video. But I do believe that this is a concerted effort to divide the Black community in order to split the Black vote. And I really wish that more of us were more discerning to understand that. Now, do I think that there are not actual issues between Black immigrants and Black Americans? Absolutely. And I think the issues are on both ends of the spectrum. It's not just one group is behaving badly and the other group isn't. I think there are problems on both sides. And I've done videos talking about how I felt white supremacy plays out in terms of Black immigrants and how they deal with Black Americans. So I'm not making excuses for anybody. But I think it is very dangerous to get into these kinds of discussions where I hear people making comments and saying they don't care about what ICE does to Black immigrants. They don't care. Oh, I'm resting. Oh, you could rest. Do you really think that when they start snatching Black people, when they come to New York and Chicago and these places start snatching Black people off the street, do you think they're going to spend a lot of time trying to determine where your ancestors were slaves at? Or do you think they're going to snatch the first group of black people they see and put them in the back of a car and disappear them just like they're doing right now? Do you really think that the end goal is just to get rid of black immigrants or immigrants generally speaking? Are we that uninformed? Are we not paying attention at all? So I really want us to understand that there are a lot of plans at play. There are a lot of intentions. And if we are not paying attention, we will become pawns on the chessboard in the game that's being played. And we'll play our own damn selves. So it is not in the interest of black people and specifically black Americans to allow these divisions to continue. Nobody wins when the family feuds. And we are all family. All of us at the end of the day are from Africa. And some of us got dropped off south. Some of us got dropped off north. Some of us got dropped off east and west. But all of us came from the same place. West Africa primarily. All of us came from a particular region in Africa. And our ancestors, if you want to talk about where everybody's ancestors came from, that's where they came from. And there is a desire, it seems, to distance ourselves from that. And I think that instead of that, we need to embrace that reality. And while I do understand that because of the impact of white supremacy and colonialism, there are black immigrants that would like to believe when they come to the United States of America that they will be treated better if they try to seek proximity to white people. And there's no question, as I've said in other videos, that and oftentimes in the beginning, they do experience better experiences because if they openly distance themselves from black Americans, because across the world, there is anti-black racism, and across the United States, there's anti-black American racism, right? That's very specific. And that no matter where you're black and you come from, there is a messaging that has been put out across through entertainment primarily, television shows, movies that have depicted black people and black American people specifically in very problematic ways, right? And people who are outside of the United States, whether they're black or any other color, consume this information. And they come into the United States of America with certain preconceived notions about black Americans. And if they move to places where they have very little interaction, they never disabuse of those notions, versus a lot of black immigrants who move places where there are other black people, and they learn very quickly that the things that they have been taught is not true. Some of them may not, but the majority learn. And you go into the workplace and you learn that when they say the N-word, they mean you too. They make no differentiation. It don't matter what they tell you. They make no differentiation in terms of how they really feel about you. And so that's why I always say to black immigrants, check yourself. Don't think that you're no better. Same thing for the Latino people and Asians. Understand that at the end of the day, you may be seeking proximity to them. They're not seeking the same thing from you. And at the end of the day, they will never see you as an equal. They may use you and weaponize you against other people that look like you, but they will never see you as an equal. But I want to be very clear that these discussions about I'm FBA and so I'm better than you, I'm ADOS and so I'm better than you, is not helpful. The Essence Festival happened last weekend, I guess it was, on July 4th weekend. And from the reports, I'm hearing mixed reports because I follow people who say they went, they had a good time. And then other people are saying there were issues with the execution of the festival. Here's the thing. I went to Essence Festival in 2019. I had a wonderful time, but I also decided that I wasn't going to do it again. And no shade to the festival. I thought I was in the gates of hell. It was hot as all get out. And I just was like, no matter how good a time I had, and I had a wonderful time, I was not subjecting myself to those kinds of temperatures ever again, right? Because just walking from the convention center to try to catch an Uber, I almost had a heat stroke, me and my cousin. And after that, I was like, I had a wonderful time, but this is a one and done for me. So even before COVID happened, was it 2019 or 2018? No, it was 2019, because we were planning to do a different festival in 2020 and then it got called off. But I mean, I organized the whole thing because, y'all, I'm a travel person. I could plan a trip. And we had a ball. It was me and my cousins. We had a ball. None of us had been before. We got excellent tickets because I made sure we got our tickets early, but had an excellent, nice Airbnb, hung out in court. We had a ball, went to saw all the things, had a wonderful time, right? But I told them, I'm not doing this again. So I haven't been back, don't plan to. Unless somebody pays me to go to Essence Festival, you won't see me there, okay? But I am aware that Essence is now owned by it's Black owned, and that this person actually came in and bought the magazine at a time when it was possible that it would have went away if it hadn't found a buyer. And the person who owns it is, I believe, Liberian. I'm not sure if he was born in the United States, but I believe he's Liberian, and he and his mother had started a hair care company, and they became very wealthy. And he bought Essence, right? And he owns Essence Ventures, and that company owns Essence. His name is Richelieu Dennis, right? And the person who now is the editor-in-chief of Essence is a person named Caroline Yanga. And I know of her because one of my favorite TED Talks is one that she did, that I've shared with people more than once. One thing that she said that I live by is if you can't be who you are where you are, change where you are, not who you are. And those are words to live by, okay? Caroline Wang, I believe, was born in Kenya, and she's now the editor-in-chief of Essence. And so there's a narrative that I've been hearing that says that the reason that the Essence Festival didn't go well this year is because the owner is African and the editor-in-chief is African, which I think is a nonsensical narrative, right? Considering that the longest standing editor-in-chief of Essence, her parents were from the Caribbean, right? So I don't think you have to be Black American to put on Essence Festival. I think you have to be respectful of the Black American culture. Essence is a festival that focuses on Black American culture, especially Black American women and Black American culture, right? Because Essence Magazine is a magazine that was created to celebrate Black women, right? And I don't think that you have to be Black American to put the festival on. I do think you have to be committed to ensuring that the mission and the purpose of the festival is what continues. Now, I have heard criticism of I hear criticism of the Essence Festival every single year it happens, right? There's always somebody on the internet that complains and will find something to complain about. There were lots of things that I could complain about what I experienced in 2019, but overall I had a good time. So I'm not going to complain about crowd control and how long some of the lines were and, all these kinds of things, because these are things that are part of going to any festival in my experience. I'm not really a festival person, first of all, because I don't like being outside in the hot sun to do anything. I like air conditioning. And so I actually enjoyed the festival because everything was in the convention center. It was air conditioned. I made sure of that fact before I went. But when you had to go outside, it was not a game. And because of the traffic in New Orleans, and this is my first time being in New Orleans, I've been to New Orleans several times, but because of the traffic during the festival weekend, Ubers couldn't come nowhere near the convention center. So you have to walk. You have to do a lot of walking to get to and from because of the traffic. And it feels like you are walking in the womb of the devil. It is so freaking hot. It is like you are in the devil's armpit, like he is cradling you in his armpit. And I just was like, I don't like that kind of weather. I don't really like crowds per se either. Like a whole lot of people around me all the time. I just don't like crowds. And so I just was like, I had a good time, but I was like, it's not something I would want to do year after year after year. But I've heard people complain. People complained in 2019 about different things. People complain every year. And I think it's very problematic to say that the reason that it's not being managed well is because the owner is now African and the owner and the person who is editor-in-chief is African. This man has owned Essence since I think 2018. So we owned it when I went and I had a good time, right? So I think that it's more people, and also from what I read, a third party manages the festival, which is often the case with a lot of large festivals is that they hire a third party to manage it. And I'm not even sure that that third party is Black owned. Is it Black owned? So I want to take a quick look at to see who Essence hired to do the Essence Festival. And it's a company called the Solomon Group, and they're not Black owned. And so I think that's something that is a problem, right? And so I think people need to go and look, and they've been doing the festival for quite some time. This ain't no new thing. So I think it's important to look at that and some of these factors and see if maybe over time there are choices and decisions that they've made. And I think especially this year when there's been all that brouhaha over Target, that it was a bad idea to have Target as a sponsor. But I also realize that it costs money to put these things on, and that Essence Festival also has a lot of sponsors. And this year, I think they had some of the lowest number of sponsors that they've had over the years in terms of putting out the festival. They put out who was going to be headlining really late, because I think it came out like a week or two before the festival. And I saw it on Facebook and I thought, that's weird. Because the thing is, people buy those tickets based on who's going to be there. When I went in 2019, Michelle Obama was putting out her book, and she was a headliner. Mary J. Blige, who I think plays there every year. Missy Elliott. El DeBarge, who I am a big fan of El DeBarge. There, like everybody who's anybody was there, but they had announced the who was going to be playing and headlining in like February or March, I want to say, because we bought our tickets in like February or March, and we wouldn't have done it if we didn't know who was going to be there. And Frankie Beverly, may he rest in eternal peace, right? All those people were playing, and we knew they were playing. And now I noticed last year it was another issue like this, and this year was the latest that they have announced the headliners. I think all of these things impact attendance. Also, we are in a recession. Nobody wants to say it, but the United States of America, not we, the United States of America is in a recession. Nobody wants to say it's in a recession, but it's in a recession, right? People are losing their jobs. There's the economy is a hot mess. And I think most of us would probably agree to that. But the Fed refuses to call it a recession, but has all the markers of a recession, right? Or most of the markers of a recession. So I think all of these are factors. People don't have the disposable income to go see Cowboy Carter and go to Essence Festival, right? And a lot of people have prioritized going to do their Cowboy Carter, tours and stuff. And maybe some people decided, especially since Essence didn't drop the schedule of who was going to be playing there until like 2 weeks or something before the festival, people decided not to go. But why do we have to blame that on who the owner is and who the editor-in-chief is? Why does the whole, they're not representing Black culture? And the people who I see making this narrative did go to the festival, right? A lot of them didn't go to the festival. So they're just, again, on TikTok, and y'all know how much I hate that platform, making videos because they know it's going to get clicks, and talking about how, nobody's respecting Black American culture and all this kind of nonsense, which is not true. Everybody in the Black community knows that Black American culture is the foundation for almost everything. All around the world. I don't care where you go. That's just a fact, right? There are two people, when I travel, and I've been to over 43 countries, right? 43 and counting. There are two artists that no matter where I go in the world, I will hear their music coming out of the speakers in stores. I will hear people busking on the street and singing their music. I actually have a video of someone in Ireland when I was in Ireland, which I need to put up on my other social media. There are two artists almost everywhere I go. Bob Marley, who was Jamaican, big up to the Jamaican people, to the island of Jamaica, which I love the island of Jamaica. Little Black history fact. I have probably been to the island of Jamaica more than any other island in the Caribbean. So I like Jamaica a lot. But Bob Marley and Michael Jackson. I don't care where I go in the world. Somebody is playing some Bob Marley or some Michael Jackson. Somebody is sitting on a corner with a guitar, singing some Michael Jackson, or they're singing some Bob Marley. So there is respect for Black culture and Black music and Black everything everywhere in the world. I don't care where you go. You're going to hear some hip hop. You're going to hear some Michael Jackson. You're going to hear Black American music. You're going to see jazz. Like, I just came back from Bologna and there was a whole avenue with the names of jazz greats. And the first name I saw was Miles Davis, right, from the 70s. They had a street with the name of important jazz artists that had played in Bologna in the 70s when there were several clubs and stuff on that street. And the first name I saw was Miles Davis. Dizzy Gillespie, I think he had a star on there. But it's the influence of Black, and if you go to Paris, it's like everywhere, right? The influence of Black America on culture globally is not a question. It's just not a question. And I don't think that anyone challenges that, right? So I think even the people who go on social media and make content to get clicks, and there's just too much of that happening on all sides of the spectrum. The people just make content so that they make negative things. They attack different groups of people because they know they're going to get views if they do it. But I think it's very important for us to be discerning and not adopt this, you're in and I'm out, and I'm in and you're out, and we don't like each other. We are all Black people. And we, especially right now, cannot afford this foolishness. We cannot afford to be at war with each other. We have to be in community with each other, all of us, if we're going to survive what is going on, right? If we're going to survive, what is happening in the United States, if you're going to survive 2.0 of what happened in the 1930s in Germany, we have to be in community with each other. These people are not playing about what they're trying to do. And they're using social media, they're using disinformation to cause division. And we have to recognize that it is not in anyone's favor or benefit in those groups for us to be unified, which is why we must strive to be unified. We have to. And I worry about what I'm seeing. And I worry about the divisions that social media is being used to create between Black men and Black women. I am very concerned about the nativism and the dashiki, right? The whole ADOS and I'm ADOS and I'm FBA and I don't care about you because I'm ADOS. You come into my comments with that, I'm going to block you. And I have blocked people. I don't respond to that kind of rhetoric. I don't even answer. I just block people because I just cannot entertain that, especially now. I will not entertain it. We can't afford it, people. We cannot, because it doesn't matter where your ancestors were slaves. We all came from the same place. We all came from the same place. I know where my ancestors came from, at least on my mother's side of the family. Not as sure about my dad, but I all know we all came from Africa. Now there's a sprinkling of Anglo-Saxons in there, but I don't really acknowledge them like that, right? But I know where my people came from. And so I really have never believed in this idea of differentiation. And I have conducted myself in the workplace and supervising people with that attitude. And have I experienced people being shady? I have stories that I could tell. I don't tell them because I'm not going to play into that kind of division. I have stories about Black immigrants. I have stories about Black Americans, but I don't owe the way that they behaved and conducted themselves to that as much as I chalk it up to white supremacy and its impact on all of us, and that we must guard against these things and understand that the only thing that benefits if we are divided is white supremacy. And for that reason, I will not, buy into this foolishness, because I'm like, we can't afford it. I think Black people have, and Black Americans specifically, have a very important contribution to culture across the globe, not just in the United States of America. And that has to be acknowledged and respected. But immigrants also have a significant contribution, Black immigrants, to the Black American conversation and culture. I just named multiple people off for you. Some of y'all may not even know. Cicely Tyson, where her parents from? Is she a tether too? Y'all won't have nobody left if you start applying some of these litmus tests that I hear some people applying on social media. you wouldn't have nobody to mention, right? So I think it's important for us to get away from these kinds of discussions and these kinds of dividing lines that people are trying to create, because who benefits? I am very interested in finding out who finances some of these, people, and where some of this stuff is coming from. Because again, I noticed it really becoming a prominent thing in the 2020s and around the last presidential election cycle, where there are people attacking Kamala Harris and saying she's not Black enough because her father is from Jamaica and her mother is Southeast Asian. So she's not Black enough, right? Well, and then you end up with what you got in the White House now, right? With people being snatched and disappeared and sent off to camps, right? And not summer camps either. And so I really think that we need to be, really aware and more discerning when we see these kinds of conversations. Ask yourself who benefits if you engage in this kind of rhetoric. Who is it helping in the end? Is it helping the cause of reparations for Black Americans? I would love to see Black Americans team up with people in the Caribbean to use the same tactics and arguments to petition for reparations in the U.S. and everywhere else where it should apply. Because I think all of these countries need to be paying reparations. The U.S., France, because they one of the worst ones, France, the Dutch, all of them, Belgium, all of them need to be paying reparations. But you're not going to get there being divided. You're not going to get there being divided. And this whole idea that, we're fighting for reparations and we don't want you to have any. Well, I've never heard anybody from the Black immigrant community say that they should have reparations from the United States government, because it makes complete sense that if your ancestors cannot be traced to slavery in the United States, then that's what you're getting the reparations for. That should be the litmus test. I don't think anyone has ever said that shouldn't be the litmus test, but I do think people need to be aware that there are a lot of people that we consider to be Black American who have parents that are immigrants, either both parents or one of their parents. So where's the dividing line? If you start creating lines, when does it end? So I just think it's a very problematic narrative. And this is not me saying that people can't refer to themselves as FBA and ADOS. Refer to yourself as a partridge in a pear tree if it makes you happy. But I think it's when you're weaponizing the term against other people that it's a problem, right? When you're trying to differentiate yourself, that it's a problem. Right. And I think there's too much of that. And I see it in the Caribbean. I see it on the continent of Africa. And I think it's problematic across the board. All of it has to stop. It doesn't benefit us. I'm better than you because I'm from here. I'm better than you because I'm from there. And I've seen it in the Caribbean too. And it irks me. It gets on my nerves because it's not useful. It's not helpful. Meanwhile, all of us, eating the same food, basically, and acting like, it didn't all come from Africa. You go to the Caribbean, everybody got their own version of rice and peas. Then you get to the continent of Africa, you get to Ghana, you get to Senegal, and you find out where that stuff comes from. And it was very revelatory. It was really a revelation for me when I went to Africa. When I went to, the first country I ever went to in Africa was Ghana. And when I went to Ghana for the first time, it really had a deep impact on me because it was the first time I actually felt like I understood where I came from. And it was very important to me. So I think it's very important for Black people to go to the continent, to go to West Africa particularly, because that's where most of our ancestors came from. So visiting Nigeria, visiting Ghana, visiting Senegal, visiting, those countries along the West, and then going further into the continent. But I think it's important because I think it gives you context and it makes it less likely that you adopt these kinds of mindsets when you understand fundamentally that pretty much all of these things come from the same place, that we all come from the same place. And we cannot allow others, outside forces, to cause us to pit ourselves against each other and to split our power. Because that's really what this is about at the end of the day, is splitting our power and taking it away from us. Right? And I realize that there are a lot of people who come from these immigrant countries, come in as immigrants, and think that they start small businesses. Because I'm gonna tell you, you go to Africa, everybody's selling something, right? So I think we come by the entrepreneurial spirit, honestly, as well. And you come to America and you want to start your own business, and that's a good thing. But one of the things that I think people immediately learn when they become business owners is they don't want to pay no taxes. And which political party is the party of not making people with money pay taxes? So then everybody want to be Republican, not understanding about some of the other policies that come along with the Republican Party, right? And so there are a disproportionate, I think, number of Black immigrants that want to identify as Republican, and that causes a problem as well, right? And so I think there are some issues there that need to be addressed. But I think that it's very important for us to understand that all of this, all roads at the end of the day lead to the same place. And nobody wins when we are fighting. None of us can win, especially those of us in the United States of America, those of you who still are in the US, whether you are Black American or a Black, first generation Black American, or a Black person who came from the Caribbean or from South America or from Central America, because there are Black people there too, or from the continent of Africa, or anywhere else. Nobody wins when the family feuds. We have to be in solidarity and community with each other at work and elsewhere. We cannot allow ourselves to be pitted against one another. We must be in community with each other. We must protect each other at work. Because that was one thing I didn't play about. I wasn't letting nobody come for nobody Black. Ever. Even when I felt people wasn't right, I would try to intervene and get to them and try to help them get themselves together, rather than feeding them to the lions. And a lot of us don't operate that way, but that's how we need to be operating, especially now. And I know it's not always easy, and I know that all of us don't have the same level of consciousness. We don't have the same level of critical thinking, which is why I'm making this video. But I just need us to be aware and be careful about becoming, engaging in nativism in a dashiki, because nativism in a dashiki or by any other name is still nativism. And that is the mindset that fuels MAGA, that fuels these kinds of ideologies from which fascism comes from, is nativism. It starts there, and then it goes into xenophobia and everything else. And so I think it's very important for us to understand how important it is for us to try to avoid these things. And that doesn't mean that you don't have a right to have pride about your culture, whatever your a secondary culture. Because to me, we're all African. We all are descendants of Africa. And then we are also descendants of the places that our families were born, whether that is in South Carolina or Alabama or Mississippi, right? Or whether it is Trinidad or Jamaica or St. Vincent or Grenada or Nigeria or Kenya or Gabon or Congo, wherever it is, right? That's part of our culture too. And it's okay. You don't have to be less proud of any of it. But let's try to appreciate each other's differences, appreciate each other's culture, because how we have gotten to where we are right now is because of the nativism attitude, white supremacy and nativism, right? And nationalism and Christian nationalism. And so we don't want to be engaging in a hybrid of the same thing and think that we're being different, because it's very harmful and it's very dangerous. So I hope that this has given people something to think about. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button. Please comment, but do so constructively. There is no democracy in my comments. And if you come in here acting buck wild and getting wild with me, you will be gone. Trust and believe me, I'm not going to respond. I'm just going to click the button, hide your comment, and remove you from the comment section. So you don't have to agree with me, but if you come in and you start attacking people, trying to justify your nativism or your xenophobia by attacking any particular groups of people, you're out of here. Whether you are Black American doing it, Caribbean, Africa, I don't care where you come from. If you start talking about they do this and they do that, you're going to be out of there. We are all Black people, and we have to respect each other, respect each other's cultures, try to be in community with each other. So we're not always going to agree on everything, and that's okay, but we have to love each other and put each other first, especially now. Ain't no time for this foolishness now, because as I always say, if they come for them at night, they'll be coming for you in the morning. See you in the morning. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one.